Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a really wide-angle look at institutional stress in America. Our source stack is incredible, actually, because it covers these wildly different events. You've got Maryland courtrooms, classified documents,
Yeah.
covert military actions off Venezuela, the Supreme Court messing with democracy itself. And yet they all seem to point towards the same, underlying theme.
They absolutely do. If you kind of zoom out and connect these dots, what you see is this landscape just defined by deep uncertainty, institutional upheaval. A lot of the analysts we read are framing this moment, as being squarely within a fourth turning.
A fourth turning, like a cyclical crisis period.
Exactly, where the established rules and orders sort of break down completely.
Okay, so our mission today isn't just to list things off. It's to unpack what these seemingly separate crises in law, foreign policy, voting rights, the economy, what they actually reveal about, the current state of governance and stability. We're sort of hunting for the pattern in the chaos here.
Precisely. We're looking for those fault lines where the traditional processes are failing, or maybe more worryingly, being intentionally bypassed.
Right. Let's dive in then. Starting with the legal and foreign policy front lines, John Bolton's indictment. He's charged with, 8 counts of transmission and 10 counts of retention of national defense information?
Yeah.
A 76-year-old guy facing what's basically a life sentence.
It is. And what's immediately striking is how different this indictment feels compared to, say, the Comey or James situations involving documents.
Yeah.
Those often felt heavily political, right?
Really.
This case, according to the sources we looked at, seems to have roots deeper down, like within the permanent career bureaucracy.
How can we tell that? What are the signs?
Well, look at the process itself. It was filed in Maryland, signed by U.S. Attorney Callais, appointed by circuit judges who started back in the Obama administration. And importantly, it was countersigned by career cybersecurity professionals. That detail, it's critical. It suggests that, high-ranking political appointees might now be facing enforcement from the system itself when security breaches are bad enough.
Yeah.
It's potentially a big shift away from purely partisan political attacks.
That level of bureaucratic detail, it does undercut the idea it's just a political hit job. But if the breach itself is so clear, why the huge difference in charges compared to past cases? What's the substance?
Well, the substance is messy. Bolton apparently transcribed handwritten notes and then sent them to his non-secure home email, which made them available to people without security clearances.
Oh, wow.
That's why one source used that unforgettable line saying this is Mar-a-Lago bathroom territory.
Yikes. Okay, so he knew he was playing fast and loose.
And here's where it gets really interesting, potentially damning. Investigation actually started under Biden, was closed, and only got reopened after Iran hacked Bolton's home email. And crucially, after that hack, Bolton apparently didn't tell the government he had classified material exposed there. Sources suggest that failure to disclose, it looks pretty bad. It's decent evidence he knew he'd blown it, as they put it, and was maybe trying to cover it up.
But even with that, Bolton's defense is probably going to be selective prosecution, right? He'll argue the whole administration's carelessness put him in this spot.
That's the classic playbook in these hyper-politicized situations, yeah. But doesn't this sort of tight bureaucratic enforcement contrast sharply with what seems like a lack of restraint in executive action elsewhere?
Absolutely. Let's pivot right there to Venezuela. We're seeing these aggressive military actions completely outside of Congress, maybe signaled by that very unusual retirement of Adam and Alvin Halsey, the Southcom leader, after less than a year, suggests maybe some internal pushback.
Definitely raises questions. And the actions themselves are extreme. A Venezuelan boat destroyed for the 5th time, reportedly on presidential orders. 6 deaths. The White House claimed drug running. But the sources we read are emphatic. 0 evidence provided. No names released. They stress this kind of action is, quote, entirely illegal. Due process doesn't just vanish because someone's suspected of a crime.
And then adding to the severity, the administration actually confirmed the CIA was authorized for covert ops inside Venezuela. That is incredibly unusual information for a sitting president to just share publicly while operations are supposedly ongoing. It feels, intentional, defiant.
It does feel like chest thumping. Sources lay out maybe 3 overlapping reasons. 1, Venezuela checks all the current administration's boxes, drugs, criminals, that narrative. 2, maybe a personal angle. Maduro openly laughed at the president back in 2017. A score to settle, perhaps. And 3, the Nobel Prize factor. Maria Corina Machado won the prize for resisting Maduro. So taking him down could be seen internally as this like slam dunk for boosting perceived global legitimacy.
So, okay, on one hand, you've got career bureaucrats enforcing process against political figures, Bolton. On the other, the executive branch seems to be bypassing oversight and due process for high-stakes foreign interventions. Venezuela. It's a perfect storm of institutional friction, really.
Which leads us right to the third branch, doesn't it? The Supreme Court and Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah, we have to shift gears now to the erosion of voting rights and this broader institutional trust issue, specifically Louisiana v. Callais. Just a quick reminder for everyone. The Roberts Court already gutted Section 5 of the VRA. That was the pre-clearance part back in 2013. Said it was obsolete.
And Justice Ginsburg, you remember her famous dissent? Getting rid of Section 5 because it worked was like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you aren't getting wet.
Exactly.
Well, that same kind of logic seems to be back. But now it's threatening Section 2.
Yeah.
That's the core mechanism letting citizens sue over discriminatory voting practices.
Okay, explain the specific threat here. What's changing with Section 2?
Right now, Section 2 works on a discriminatory impact standard. If a new voting map or rule has the effect of diluting minority votes, it's illegal. Doesn't matter what the map maker intended.
Okay, impact matters.
Yes. But the court looks like it might be ready to change that to an intent-only standard. If that happens, good luck proving a case. Proving malicious intent, that's a massive, massive burden of proof. It makes challenges almost impossible.
Wow. That is a staggering hurdle, and sources point out this infuriating irony. The argument for race neutrality from the government's own lawyer relies on the stereotype that black voters only elect Democrats.
Exactly. It completely ignores why the VRA exists in the first place, to stop vote dilution, ensure fair representation, whatever the political outcome. It's like twisting the VRA against itself, all under this banner of, like, legal purity.
So if the court rules this way, it basically gives a green light to aggressively dismantle majority-minority districts everywhere, provides legal cover.
But here's the fascinating tactical twist that sources predict. This could blow back. Blue states, think New York, New Jersey, Illinois, California, they could also start dismantling their majority-minority districts.
Wait, why would they do that?
Because, sources estimate, this kind of retaliatory redistricting could let Democrats pick up maybe 12 to 14 House seats.
Get out. Seriously.
Seriously. They could use the court's own ruling as plausible deniability. Leadership could say, hey, the court's made this race-neutral standard. We're just following the law. Maximize partisan advantage using the other side's weapon.
Okay, hang on. So the Supreme Court could accidentally help Democrats gain House seats while simultaneously gutting minority representation. That seems perverse.
It's a deeply perverse political paradox, yeah.
The 12-14 seat estimate comes from analysis of likely redistricting in those big blue states with packed minority access districts currently. It just highlights how corrosive this whole instability has become.
That is. Yeah, fascinating and depressing all at once. So the predicted fallout from this ruling.
Yeah.
Less diversity in Congress, obviously.
More polarization, probably more voter support for federal anti-gerrymandering laws down the line, and crucially, huge voter resentment towards the court itself, its power, its structure. The judicial branch might actually be triggering a backlash against itself here, feeding that whole cycle of institutional distrust.
Which brings us perfectly to the bigger picture, doesn't it? Section 3.
Yeah.
Connecting all this legal and political mess to that framework of the fourth turning.
Right, Neil Howe's theory. We're supposedly deep in this cyclical crisis period. He maps these turnings roughly 80-year cycles. This current one started, around 2008, expected to last into the earlier mid-2030s.
Yeah, and previous fourth turnings were these massive societal shakeups. The Civil War, the Great Depression, and World War II.
Okay.
And the reason the VRA fight, the Bolton case, the Venezuela stuff, why it all fits this model is because they're symptoms of the same core problem. Profound institutional distrust. The foundation feels like it's rotting.
The survey data is just staggering on this. Only 33% of Americans trust the U.S. government.
It's incredibly low.
Just 28% have confidence in major institutions generally. And media trust, also near rock bottom at 28%. When people stop believing the institutions are legitimate, well, they stop playing by the established rules, don't they?
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how the economy reflects this, particularly this widening K-shaped recovery or divergence. The top 1% now control about 31% of U.S. net worth. And this isn't just abstract. You see it in real consumer behavior.
Give us the numbers on that divide. How does it play out?
Okay, so look at spending data. Lower income household spending. Basically stalled. It's up just 0.6% year over year.
Barely keeping up with inflation, if that.
Pretty much. Meanwhile, higher income household spending is up 2.6% year over year. The two halves of the economy are just moving in totally different directions, and that reinforces that feeling of we're not all in this together.
And the generational impact adds another layer, especially with tech disruption fueling the uncertainty. Younger workers, like 22 to 25, in fields exposed to AI, they've seen maybe a 13% relative drop in employment since Gen AI took off. That kind of rapid shift, it breeds massive anxiety and distrust in the future, in the system.
And the markets. They're a mirror to all this instability. You're seeing historic highs in gold.
Right, the classic flight to safety.
Exactly. When trust in paper currency and government stability dips, people want hard assets, gold, housing too. Plus, look at the concentration risk in stocks. The top 10 stocks are now something like 40% of the S&P 500's market cap.
Wow.
Amplified massively by all the passive ETF money flowing in. The market's kind of consolidating around just a few perceived safe havens.
And you even see that generational split in how people invest, according to the sources. Gen Xers, described as independent, contrarian, skeptical of institutions, doing their own thing. Millennials, now the biggest group in the market, are apparently more collaborative. It's like we rise or fall together, driven by FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah, that's just a very different mindset. Either highly collaborative or maybe highly reactive, swinging with the news cycle.
So instability breeds opportunity, maybe, but you absolutely have to understand this deep context. The institutional decay, the economic fault lines, you need that to navigate.
Exactly. Process over noise, as one source put it.
Which brings us nicely to Section 4, the public voice. Practical advice drawn from sources covering those anti-Trump protests, the No Kings movement. The immediate political reaction has been, well, aggressive. The administration, allies like Mike Johnson, Sean Duffy, Tom Emmer, strongly attacking protesters, using really inflammatory language. America haters, terrorists, violent radicals.
Yeah, strong stuff.
Yeah.
And in response, the sources, many from experienced organizers, offer really detailed practical advice for people participating. How to be effective, how to stay safe in that kind of charged environment. This is like real-world navigation of institutional conflict.
Let's break down some of that advice, starting with safety, even paranoia.
Okay. Safety and paranoia tips included. Turn your cell phone off, then back on again before and after attending. Helps minimize tracking, theoretically. Bring a Camel back, the hydration pack you wear. Can't be accused of throwing water bottles if you're literally wearing your water. Smart.
That is clever.
And crucially, write your lawyer's phone number on your arm. Permanent marker, just in case.
Okay. And what about the message? How do you stay on point?
The absolute most critical piece of advice seemed to be, do not take the bait. Do not provoke violence. Stick to unifying points like being against fascism or against violations of the Constitution. Don't give the opposition the soundbite or the footage they want.
Makes sense. Visibility matters too, right? Signs?
Yeah, use signs that show specific support. Defend the Constitution is better than just a vague slogan. Short, clear words, big letters, designed to be read quickly by cameras by passing cars.
And the civic action part, what comes after the protest?
It's simple but vital. Just showing up is number one. But number two is contacting your senators, your representatives the following week. That connects the visible protest to actual, actionable political pressure.
I liked the advice for dealing with direct confrontation, too. It had a bit of a dark humor.
Yeah, that was good. When angry drivers flip you off, wave back. Big smile. Give them the full, as one source called it, or the classic Southern reply. Bless your heart. Use that irony, diffuse the tension.
And remembering the core right here, the First Amendment right to peaceably assemble.
Crucial. And one tactic suggested was powerful. If police or military confront protesters, sit down.
Sit down.
Sit down. It makes it crystal clear who's rioting if things escalate.
Yeah.
If heads start getting cracked, the video evidence is unambiguous. You can't riot while sitting peacefully.
That's a strong visual.
And finally, really emphasizing the patriotic message.
Sure.
Encourage people to bring an American flag, fly it right side up. It directly counters that narrative that protesters hate America. It visually reinforces that this is about defending constitutional principles, taking the flag back in a way.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, what's the big takeaway for someone listening?
I think the core takeaway is that this institutional instability we're seeing, Bolton getting charged by the bureaucracy, the executive bypassing law in Venezuela, the Supreme Court chipping away at the VRA, it's not happening in a vacuum. It's playing out against this backdrop of really deep Societal distrust, economic division, generational shifts, all the things the fourth turning theory tries to frame as this sort of inevitable crisis period.
Right. So the lesson for everyone listening, whether you're a concerned citizen, a business analyst, an investor, is that this environment, it's chaotic, it feels overwhelming, but this is what you need to navigate now. The sources kept emphasizing, use process over noise. You have to actually distill what's changing institutionally from just the daily screaming headlines.
That's exactly right. Focus on the structural shifts, not just the fleeting outrage.
And we've seen clear evidence that these deep institutional challenges can have major political consequences. Remember that potential 12 to 14 seat swing in the House if the VRA gets deaded.
Potential impact.
So, if this kind of institutional instability is going to be the norm for the next decade or so, we have to ask you, the listener, what foundational institution outside of the court, Congress, or the executive branch do you think will be the next one to face a really transformative challenge? One that fundamentally changes the balance of power.
Could it be the media? The university system? Maybe the Federal Reserve.
Something to think about. That's your thought to mull over until our next deep dive.